So I have questions about marketing, advertising,
I
parenting.
I love it, and I actually for this type of conversation, I love no prep. Like I like just having the conversation. It's great, and yeah, I personally for me, can I call you Fran instead of Francisco? What would you prefer, Fran? Okay. I I've been so measured with so many things in my career, as far as image and things like that. I've kind of reached a point where I do give a fuck, but I feel like I've earned my stripes and I have life to live outside of work and I don't have time for bullshit clients or, worthless cultures anymore. I have two kids and a beautiful wife and I love what I do and I'd like to focus on the stuff that makes me happy for the rest of my life. So this is a good time to have this conversation. I'm a nice guy. And as we'll talk about, you know what? Sometimes, man, nice guys do not finish last. And I don't know. Anyway, yeah, no, so self-professed like guy who loves marketing, loves advertising. I love creativity. I kind of geek out on everything from like where research, kind of meets the road. It's not the research; it's like the aha moments. We can, call them whatever you want to, but it's like discovering something new that you can kind of pry into, and then doing something with it. I haven't worked in an advertising agency in a while, but I love ads. I love all that stuff. I love making those connections for customers. But it's really just it just really interests me. It's kind of like understanding what makes people tick and how you can help them and how you can kind of get close to them. I really love that stuff, and that really comes from being a really nice guy who's outgoing and wants to get to know people. That really is just an extension from my personality. I try to stay off LinkedIn if I can. I've gotten better about that lately, to not be on LinkedIn and nights and weekends. But no, so I have a teenage son and a preteen son, and so every day is a new adventure to learn. Not only how to be a better dad and a better husband, but also like learning what the world looks like through their eyes, which is really interesting. So playing with them, playing chess with my youngest son is really fun. He's into Pokemon cards, so I've been playing a lot of Pokemon lately, which is kind of cool. My older son is just starting to drive, and so scared dad teaching a teenager how to drive, which is really fun. And honestly, those are things that are really top of mind. No, my wife and I spend a lot of time because she's also in the business. She's the CEO of the agency I founded in 2012. We spend a lot of time kind of talking about life and work, and then we spend some purposeful time for aperitivo. We love the Italian culture, but spend a lot of purposeful time like winding down and trying to not talk about work. Also, a soccer player, love soccer. Uh, Currently still playing. We'll see how long my knees and my right shoulder can hold up for that. And then trying to plan another trip to Italy right now.
I have an important question. Are you a Kun Agüero, a Messi, or Mascherano?
Let's see. Here's why I'm a Messi fan. And not that I was a huge Barca fan, because I'm not. I'll tell you who I support in a moment. I get so tired of guys hitting the turf at the slightest touch, and the game has really changed. Soccer is a very physical game. It should be a physical game, and the players are really protected now, and people dive because it's strategic to dive within striking range, right, of the net. And then you watch Messi, one of the smallest guys on the pitch, and he is always taking bumps and bruises, elbows to the back of the net, having his, ankles kicked out from under him, and he just doesn't go down. If he goes down, he got hit pretty hard, right? So he's earned my respect that way from just staying on the ball. I think is really important. But I'm a Tottenham supporter for the Premier League, and that stemmed from watching a lot of really good soccer around the world and seeing how many times they sent someone to the Champions League, obviously. But I think it was the 2012 season. That was the season when Manchester City won the league, like the last couple minutes of the last game, and United thought they had it locked up, and they were kind of celebrating, waiting on City's game to end, and just that emotion of like that last goal and that feeling. I was like, all right, I've got to pick a team because I can imagine what this is like if this was my team. And I took a step back and I was like, who have I really enjoyed watching this season, the last couple of seasons, and who can I adopt without being accused of being a bandwagon fan? Right? No one's going to accuse me of being a bandwagon fan if I pick Tottenham. But also at the time they had several American players and had a couple American players for years. So I was like, you know what? I really enjoy watching them play. So that's who I adopted.
What do you see? What do you see when you look yourself at the mirror? And what things have changed 10 years back or 20 years back with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is giving myself permission now, giving myself permission to just be myself, giving myself permission to not pretend to know everything, right? To not always have the answers, which is really important. I would say, gosh, when I started in the industry 22 years ago, something like that, I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. I was just happy to have a job in advertising somehow. And I came through design and art direction is how I got my start. And it's like slowly other people had more confidence in me than I did in myself. And I kind of started listening to what other people, thought and try to be the person that other people wanted me to be. And that worked for a while. At the same time of like kind of suppressing the stuff that I felt was naturally what made me unique, what gave me the opportunities. And so starting my own little boutique agency in 2012 was really, I feel like the first time I was an adult. I hate to say that, I'm 47. But it was the first time I really got the opportunity to just be myself professionally. The good and the bad, mistakes, or the victories, and start learning real lessons for, not just running a business, but what the industry could do, for my career, but also what I could do within the industry. So I wish I could go back and tell my mid-20s self, it's okay just to be yourself, and it's okay to not be right, and it's okay to say, I don't know. And it's okay to just kind of like take the bumps and bruises and wear them with honor and go learn and, win another day.
Take it easy. No?
Take,
Probably, yeah, take it easy.
yeah.
We are all running. I found myself some days running to
Mhm.
nowhere
Mhm.
because it's subconsciously I think we are taught that way, right? Like to do push ourselves every day, but some days it's okay to
Yeah,
stop.
no,
Yeah.
it is. And, I'm curious, we can have this conversation about the different cultures too, because especially American culture is go, go, go. I need it now. Why can't I have it yesterday? Faster. Don't slow down to, you saw, I joked recently about, slowing down to actually get, a nice foundation of strategy and focus in place. What happens when you don't do that? But like, I've literally had people just say that quote, like, I don't have time for that. We need to go. Like, we need to move faster than this. And, was pulled into that to the point of doing busy work, having to look busy. Sleeping, I tracked my sleep for a couple of years around the time I started the agency, and I was averaging 3.5 hours of sleep a night, not just Monday through Friday, like every day of the week for a couple of years. And in hindsight, I'm like, for what? I wish that I had told myself to slow down. That slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's what they teach us when we learn how to race cars, right? And figure out where the curves are before you get to them and you fly off the road. Because I know it's taken its toll in like physical health, but emotional health, relationships, all that stuff.
Yes, so on point. What do you think your kid your kids think about you? Do you think you're cool? Do you think I mean, what do they think? What would they say if
Um,
I ask them who's
so
Philip?
unfortunately, I tell too many dad jokes for them to think that I'm cool. But you know, it's a good question. What would my kids think about me? They would see the side that pushes, that wants to continue to grow. I think is something we've talked about. That we don't have to be right all the time. We definitely shouldn't make excuses. It's okay to make mistakes. I believe they understand that. But the other thing is, I think they've seen me calm in stressful situations, which is good. Maybe not at home when I'm getting on to them about picking up their socks for the 27th time. But like driving in the car when other people cut us off, to be calm in those situations. And my younger son is kind of dealing with a bully right now at school, which is kind of cool. Excuse me, not cool. Excuse me. But how he's handling it's kind of cool because he's kind of like, it's not hurting me. He's just being mean to me. There's no physical harm yet. So I'm really proud of how he's handling those situations emotionally. And I'd like to pretend that comes from not only the help he's getting from like counseling and stuff, but also from the calmness that we can have at home.
It's funny because I have a client. He's from Minnesota, and he has two daughters, two little daughters, one 4 and one 5. And he told me last week he's afraid about them becoming soft because I mean he's in a really good position, like economically. He has like a big business, but he told me he stated the quote: "Hard times make strong people.
Mm-hmm.
Strong people make good times. Good times make soft people." So he was afraid of them having an easier
Mm-hmm.
life. So how do you prepare your kids to not be soft? Because I'm 25, and sometimes I feel like we became soft. I mean, I remember my dad, my mom, like like older generations. They were tough.
Mm-hmm. And gosh, we could talk about this just in its own podcast. You think about generations before us, having to deal with like World War II, you know, the real Great Depression, the Dust Bowl here in the United States, and then going through and watching the world grow up. I can only speak from the United States perspective, but actually experiencing like real systemic racism for people of color to be painted as the boogeyman every day and be treated like that. Um, um, where being called a name really did hurt, and because there was actions behind those names that people were called. My father being drafted to go to Vietnam in a war that he didn't want to be a part of or agree with. Like I, what I'm doing is like I'm building up the stuff that's been facing the past, and it's really interesting because I've tried to talk about that with my sons. Like I didn't serve in the military. I wasn't forced to serve in the military. If I need if I need a job, I can probably go get one, right? And there's been people ahead of us who really been through some times where there really weren't jobs. Um, you know, if you're hungry enough, you'll dig ditches for a living, right? But there have been times where there really were not jobs to be had, um, or there are wars that you were forced to fight. Like that's some really crazy things. So now, um, as far as how I see them, it's making sure like my oldest son, he's 16, and we made him get a job. And we didn't make him get a job to make money. It's no, you need to go understand how the world's going to treat you and how you have to behave in society under someone else's, like he said, like sports coaches, but like go work for a boss. I don't care if you like them or not. They could be a terrible boss, but you got to go start learning how to take direction and operate under someone else's culture and rules for a while before you go to college. so that you understand that it's we have a pretty cushy home life. I think they do, and so that was part of it, was sending him out into the world to actually go through those things. My younger son is autistic. He's high functioning autistic. And so I mentioned earlier that he's been, going through some counseling and some therapy for years to kind of give him his toolbox of things he can use in social situations and understand culture that's happening around him that doesn't make sense for the way he's wired. And so in his case, preparing him, like the bullying, preparing him to be able to speak up for himself and defend himself and slow down and listen to things that are around him he may not understand. His toolbox is a little bit different than my older son. The hard times he's going to face when he gets a little bit older is going to be a little bit different than maybe the average kid at his age right now. And so I don't know. For my youngest son, it's helping him understand the world's not going to protect him at all times, that he has to have his own toolbox to deal with those social situations. And for my older son, it's, taking his phone away from him and making him go to work some days so he's actually, he's actually understanding how the world kind of works around him.
Wise. Yeah. And how was your childhood?
So I grew up obviously before the internet, which was a big difference between me and my kids. But I grew up in the country, in the United States, what we call it. Like I grew up on a dirt road with a tobacco field at the end of the street, like really way out in the sticks. Like we didn't even have a stoplight in our town. We had like a caution light, slow down at the one intersection we had. But it meant, going outside, playing outside a lot, playing in the woods, barefooted kind of stuff, building forts. Lots of imagination, I guess, is what I'm getting to, and a lot of freedom, which was really nice. It also meant that we were a bit insulated from some things. I have friends that grew up in bigger cities, and their lives were just very, very different. I think mine was a lot of what I got to see about culture was through the television. And there were some things culturally that were around me growing up that I didn't like or agree with. Racism was one of them. That's what happens when you grow up in the South, the Southern United States, as you're around some things that, have just been held on for years. And it kind of helped shape how I see the world. Watching how people were treated, understanding that I didn't want to treat someone that way and how I wanted to be treated myself, but also being able to watch television and see things happening in bigger cities. I watched a lot of BBC programming through PBS. So I grew up watching Doctor Who and, some things that I didn't, some British comedy I didn't really understand, but it was really nice to expand my mind and see that there was bigger things in the world, and it always kind of made me hungry. But I would say being really insulated in the American South was, I didn't really realize it was a challenge until probably my 20s. And I hadn't really started traveling yet. So, again, if I could do some things different, I'd go back to my teens and try to save money where I could, because I was working as a teenager, and start traveling earlier. That would have been really nice.
Yeah, I resonate with you because, I'm from Argentina, and I mean, it's a developing country, of course, but I am from a small city in the north.
Okay.
I mean, now it's like 500,000
Oh, wow.
citizens. It's not big. And I remember I used to play football in the street with my
Yeah.
friends. No phone, no computer. And my parents couldn't buy me a phone. In fact, like it just my mom told me that, I mean, we can't afford this. I mean, you need to work if you wanna like have one, like your
Hmm.
friends, because my friends had money at that moment, like their parents. But yeah, and I think looking back, that social media and yeah, of course, tech and change everything. But one thing that I've been talking with another guest and friends and colleague is that everything became so ephemeral today. Like even love, work, everything is so fast, so immediately, like dopamine.
Hmm.
So how do you stay grounded, and how do you make your kids grounded and stay present and yeah.
Yeah, man, I got to tell you, I haven't figured that out. The good thing is we're aware of it and we talk about it openly as a family, my wife and my kids. My 16-year-old is probably the toughest one to wrangle because he's 16 and he does have a phone and Instagram and the entire world's right there for the instant dopamine hit. My wife and I catch ourselves like in the evenings, when we're sitting down on the sofa and having a nightcap, like catch ourselves on our phones and like, can we just go put these things away? Like leave them in another room. Um, I found, um, I found it's funny because there's so many guys who go through this phase of talking about stoicism, but I found really being purposeful to look back behind us. I don't know if you've ever seen this book by Ryan Holiday, The Daily Stoic. Um, he's written lots of books, and there's lots of jokes out there about guys getting stuck in stoicism. But I think the biggest perspective I get from that is recognizing that a lot of the problems we have now that we think are really unique to this time, this age, this decade, my age, where society says I'm supposed to be at this time, or money or conflicts. The same problems have been around for humans for thousands of years. And the really smart people who were able to excel slowed down and didn't allow things that were out of their control to really affect their lives and their emotions. And it's not a switch, it's a practice. And there has to be a constant reminder of, that's not really within my control. How am I going to allow it to affect me? And if I don't do something purposeful a day, I say meditation, but it's messier than that. It's really just stopping to slow down and think for a minute and just calm things. The reason I like this book is because it's actually almost like a daily passage. There's a phrase from some Stoic from long ago, and then Ryan Holiday kind of mentions, writes a paragraph or two. It's quite short. What his perspective is on that and how it affects a modern life. And so we talk to the kids too about put the phone away, step away from the devices, do something purposeful. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy, but just stop and slow down. And I think one of the biggest things we do as a family is still have dinner at the dinner table. Um, Almost every night. We still do the TV movie pizza thing, obviously, but sitting down without screens, without a television, and just kind of talk about our days. Again, it's messy sometimes because I have a teenager and I get onto him too much. But having that purposeful time together really resets. And you can tell the mindset shift in the kids when we've had that good positive time at the dinner table every night.
Food for thought.
Yeah, yeah,
You
literally.
you shared, yeah, you shared a post indeed, I think a few days ago, that says everything that needs to be said has already been said, but since no one was listening, everything must be said again. That's what you shared.
Yeah, that's
And you
nice.
mentioned, you said that he was talking about parenting.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. That's
Yeah,
exactly right.
interesting. Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. This goes back to business too. Sometimes, like I can tell my kid, I mentioned earlier about picking up their socks, 27 times. And my wife reminds me, and this is taken back to business, unless you build some sort of system, maybe it's a checklist, of how to get ready in the morning or what to do before you leave for school or what you do before you go to bed. Like those little systems we can build for ourselves so we don't have to think about picking up our socks because there's a little reminder every day. Um, it's funny how that stuff the things we learn in business can really help us in life. And unfortunately, I'm not organized enough to build those systems for him yet.
To your point about like more about work, a few days ago, I was watching an interview from Anselmo Ramos, who's the is the founder of GAT. I don't know if you heard about him.
Hmm.
GAT agency. Um, Anselmo Ramos and Gaston Vigio, they won the agency of the year last year
Yes.
in Cannes. But they are really nice guys, really genuine people. And I love the name, the philosophy of the agency. And he was telling in a masterclass that whenever they end a presentation, they ask to a client, "How do you feel? How do you feel about this? How do you feel after what we said?" So to this point, how often do you trust your gut when it comes to your job? And how often do you rely on data? Because you said that you are more on maybe research strategy. So yeah, how often?
I love this topic, and it's, we can all quote Maya Angelou. People won't remember what you did or said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. That's really something to live by, and it's gosh, so many ways to go with this. Again, I talked about my son being on the spectrum. There's a lot of times where he doesn't understand like why there isn't a black and white thing. We talk about data, right? Black and white, it's right there. There's the data. The data says X, Y, Z. Without understanding that data gets spun all the time to make different things, like especially look at politics nowadays, right? Or social issues, where we can spin politics and talk about how to make the data talk, how to make the data sing, because ultimately it is how we feel about something. It's our gut reaction to something that really matters, and that's manipulated for us every day on social media and advertising, and especially politics. Right? I love data because it gives us something objective to measure against. But ultimately, it is your intuition of what to do with that information that counts, right? If we all have access to the same data, it's what you do with it that matters. I was at an agency for a while, a couple of years ago, that's really research driven, and that's what they pride themselves on, is focusing on data and digging into the data and digging into the data and being very prideful about, being data driven. But there was a project where I felt like that they were digging so deep, they overlooked how people were responding to the product. And I'm trying not to say the name of the company, but what it came down to is they were trying to put a product in people's homes by convincing them how much healthier they would be if they adopted this product, or how much more of the product they would consume if they put this device into their home. And the thing they want people to consume is something we should all be doing more of anyway. But at the surface level, the answer had already been given to them, because every employee who is going to test the customer's product, every one of the people I talked to on the customer side, every one of the people I talked to on the client side, all had the same reaction to the product, which was like, I don't really want that in my house. Because this product is something we're used to seeing in an office setting, not in the house. The data said it. Our employees said it. The client's employees said it. The customers said it. But that was that was the initial gut reaction to the product. They were digging past that. They were digging into the data. And I kind of sat back and said, the problem isn't in the data. The problem is you're just not listening to how people respond to the product. They don't want it. And to me, the solution was like, go look at other products that people didn't trust. Shopping carts. Rory Sutherland pointed out, like Japanese toilet seats, escalators. Like, people didn't trust these things when they first came out. They had to actually see them being used by other people to trust them and test them. So to me, the solution was a little product placement to make sure people understand this is okay to have in the house. Long-term play. Solve that problem, and then you can dig into the data to try and sell more. And so that was a point where I felt like data was getting in the way of actually listening to people and their gut reactions to stuff. It also was like my gut reaction, like, I don't want that in my house. So I listened to my own intuition, and then I started picking up on everybody else saying it for months. And I was like, guys, the solution is, it's not deeper in the data. It's right in front of your face, and you're not listening to your own gut about it.
On one of my first episodes, I was talking with Steve Walls.
Love the guy.
Yeah, the full episode is not live yet, but will be. And he told me one example that blew my mind, which is don't look at the don't look at the behavior, look at the why.
Mm.
And he made one example which was the behavioral response of your Apple Watch
Mm-hmm.
to your lack of sleep
Mm-hmm.
is you have to change your pillow.
Mm.
That's the behavioral response.
Mm.
But the why is maybe your kids are crying at night
Mm-hmm.
because they have exams.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your kids are not sleeping, and that's why you are not sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference between like the why and the behavioral
Yeah.
answer. Yeah, from a product, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and if people will go follow Steve, that he spent time with people in their homes, listening to them, talking to them, not sitting in front of a screen with data, right? He talked to people and got to understand those questions and ask the why questions. And you don't get there without the people, right?
Yeah. He said to the point of Steve, he said that you judge a planner based on how many people want to talk to them. So, how do you judge as a fractional CMO or whatever you define yourself?
Mm-hmm.
How do you judge someone like in your role?
That's a great question. Gosh, and friend, I'm really a marketing generalist who came up through art direction and advertising. There's people who think I'm a writer. There's people who think, uh, I'm a data guy, and it's because I'm so curious about the whole thing as a generalist, where I can focus on and bring in help on the real problem. I don't know if you've heard this phrase, like if all you have is a hammer, then you're just constantly looking for nails to pound. That's one of the things I judge when I'm talking to clients, and trying to figure out if they've solved the right problem, right? It's often that the problem they're trying to solve is way downstream from the real problem. And you don't get there without an open mind and a general understanding of trying to find out what the real problem is. And I get really judgy, I guess, when people come in and they're just trying to sell what they do without trying to understand what the customer really needs or what the client really needs for their customers. That's a big one for me. That said, if you have an SEO firm and you're selling SEO, of course you're going to try to sell SEO. If you're a PR firm, you're trying ultimately you're focused on PR. That's completely understandable. But some of those things don't fix every problem that the client might have. And that's where I think, if on the client side, having a marketing generalist who can start, trying to figure out what the real problems are really helps. And sometimes that's, an internal person. Sometimes if the company's big enough and they have the right culture, they can have a good marketing team in-house, or they can have a marketing savvy CEO, which is always a good thing, in my opinion. But it's good to have someone kind of try to figure out what those real problems are they need to solve and then go from there and get the right solutions. By the way, most companies do need SEO. It's just not going to fix every problem.
Yeah, I think there's a huge problem. In my experience, I've been working at in a PR agency
Mhm.
in Dubai, and there were I mean they were of course trying to sell their service,
Of course, they
but there
should.
were many clients that didn't need PR because they didn't have a strategy, they didn't have even a website or a logo or a positioning or
Yeah,
a problem statement.
yeah,
So I was telling like this client doesn't need they don't need a PR strategy. They need the foundation.
hmm,
But sometimes I think like agencies get stuck in the just sell what we do and we don't care.
yeah. No, I agree with you. And this is a place where I hope we're seeing a shift where we talk about it. We call it the Hollywood model. And I'll give you a background of that. Like when I was a kid, and when I watched a movie, and say it was like an MGM movie, like you see the lion come on and lion roar, and then it roll right into the credits, actors opening scenes. Now you and I can't even watch a 30-minute TV show on Apple TV without seeing 5 or 6 production houses who did the lighting, who did the CG, who did, whatever, location scouting. And then you get to the studio who actually organized it. And that's kind of how I see agencies working. Like forever, like the agency's just been, we're the agency. Oh, by the way, like we're acting as an agent on your behalf. I get it. That's where the word agency comes from. We're not actually doing some of this work. We're hiring other people to do this stuff. We don't have deep expertise in it, so we don't actually know how to judge if that's the right work that needs to be done for you. And I think the Hollywood model brings all those people to the table with transparency. And so if you're, I'm just going to say SEO, if you're an SEO agency and you recognize, wait a second, like, of course you need SEO, but like you don't have the right marketing mix. And we don't know what that is, but we're going to bring in someone to work at the table with us to get the things you need outside of SEO so that our SEO will be more effective for you in the long term. And so we can work with you for longer because you'll be more successful. And I'd like to see agencies do more of that. Agencies have more partnerships, more transparency, more help with each other instead of just, oh gosh, can we sell that and mark it up for 30%? But that really ultimately would give marketing a better name. It would give agencies a better name. It would give consultants a better name to actually do the right thing with transparency and try to help the customer's business.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't hear about that. It's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How many, talking about experts, because you shared the podcast to like the interview to Mike Cesario, and I was listening
Oh,
thanks
yeah,
to
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and it was really interesting the point where when he was telling the experts, like the retail experts, told him that he needed 3 to 5 SKUs to have space on the shelf. And it made me think about how many. I mean, there are too many experts, I think, in the industry. I mean, everyone is calling themselves experts.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but
Love that.
do you feel like there isn't like fresh input, fresh air? Because Mike Cesario told like I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm an outsider. I mean, and I'm doing very cool things. So when I look at different industries, it's not a coincidence that the people who is leading the project, they are outsiders. So in the advertising industry, I think we need more outsiders.
Yeah.
We need more input.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And a few moments ago, it may have sounded like I was bashing agencies. I'm not. I think that's actually some of the value of an agency, or especially a consultant, is to have that outside view. David C. Baker has a phrase that I love, which is, it's hard to read your own label from inside the jar. I call it the jelly jar test, right? And sometimes as an outside consultant or someone like in Mike's case, an outsider in the industry, it's easier to kind of stand outside the scrum and go, wow, no one's paying attention to this. But also to bring those experiences. I mean, he worked in advertising. He understood attention and building a brand and stuff, and not just trying to go in and sell water as a commodity the same as everyone else. He understood the importance of standing out, being top of mind, and brought that as a strength to his company. And I think that's just wonderful. But I think that's a place where sometimes we in marketing kind of shoot ourselves in the foot too, because we come in, like you said, as experts. Oh, you got to do it this way, as opposed to coming in with curiosity and an open mind and listening to the real pain points of the customer, and then trying to help them figure out the things they may be overlooking. And you can't come in and say, it's my way or the highway, I'm the expert. You can't come in and start prescribing medicine if you haven't diagnosed what the real problem is. And I think that's what gets us in trouble. And in his case, Mike came in with, a little bit of fire and some curiosity and just enough experience where he could see some cracks and take advantage of them.
I would say maybe it's not a new way, but a new mindset. And I always watch Gary V consultation. They have like Binary Media. They have a called 4Ds. It's like workshops for small and medium business owners. It's like 1 hour video. And he always speaks about how I would say, I mean, the brand book, the brand guidelines,
Mhm.
the off brand, on brand.
Mhm.
He says that it's not something. It has nothing to be with real life. Like the off brand word
Mhm.
is something more academical. What do you think about that? Because, for example, for context, I watch Ryanair TikTok or Duolingo.
Mhm.
I don't know what to say about what's on brand and what's off brand.
Yeah, yeah. So Duolingo is wild, man. I'm a Duolingo user, and their social media blows me away. There's times where I'm like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
gosh, they're really pushing the envelope there, aren't they?" But I think that that is it. I think they have, but I think they've kind of solidified that they have some character and soul through their social media that's outside of just the app. And then I've seen some. I don't know if you are you do you use Duolingo? Do you use the app? So we've actually started to see some of that spiciness come through the characters, right? Maybe not in Duo, but some of the other characters that kind of look at you and just kind of like, whatever, like that. So I don't know if they developed that on purpose with the app and then took it out, or if they discovered something that was a space for them to have some character and bring it in from outside. Um, that is a good example of, and we're going to go back to the brand book because I have a very strong opinion about that in just a moment. Um, so Giles Edwards, who has the Call to Action podcast, he's shared something with me I thought was really wonderful, and it's a quote from Jeremy Bullmore, who's a legendary advertising copywriter, and he said that brands are built like a bird's nest: one twig, one string, one piece of twine, one little piece of trash at a time, over a long period of time. And those things that you build a brand with come from lots of different places. I just love that. And I think what maybe Gary Vee is responding to, because I haven't heard him talk about brand guides, there's a lot of times where we go through a brand workshop, right? And we create a logo and some colors and some fonts, and then we say, here's the brand guide, right? Don't deviate from this. And then you have people in advertising who are like, well, you're restricting my creativity. I don't want to use that. What if I did this? I can get more attention this way. My opinion on that is that you should establish a very clear brand standard guide. And I don't mean a style sheet of like 10 pages. I mean 80 to 100 pages of like, here's who we are and why the brand matters. Here's how this brand is currently going to live in the world. And the reason we need the consistency across the whole marketing mix is so that it's recognizable as us. Now, that being said, and this is in the gray area of right or wrong, left or right, black or white, right? It's that when things happen that we get to take advantage of, don't let it be a one hit wonder. What can we learn from that? How can we absorb that into the brand and expand on that so we can continue to grow that bird's nest, if you will? But there's something really important about being careful of those one offs. And again, Duolingo does a good job of this. Like trends are important to kind of like, get up and get moving. Um, I'm trying to remember who said this the first time. Like, don't let trends be your surfboard. Treat them more like a wave. Like your brand is a surfboard. The waves can push, the brand a little further. But if you're just depending on the one trend, it's going to die, and someone else is going to take advantage of the next wave. Um, but you do establish those things for a reason, and it's because you need to be top of mind and build those memory structures, and so that you can pass what I call the thumb test. I don't know if you've seen me talk about that at all, but if I can go up to your ad or your content or whatever and cover up the logo with my thumb, and it might be one of your competitors, I don't really recognize you, then you don't pass the thumb test, which means you're not really building memory structures around the way you want me to think about your brand. Obviously, not everything can have a logo on it. It's not what I'm saying, but developing tone of voice, developing the other distinctive brand assets, staying within that lane and trying to make sure that we're thinking long term with memory structures, not just that trend or whatever that new platform is that we need to be present on. Or what's that one ad that we didn't sell to the last customer that we think we can shoehorn into this brand? Those things can get quick attention, but they don't always create those memory structures we need for long-term recall.
I know you gotta go, so just the last question.
Yeah.
Um, what brands we should look at from your opinion, and what are you grateful for today, and what are your plans for the rest of the year?
That's a good question about the brands. It's funny because I've asked people the same thing and haven't thought about my own. I think I'd like to talk about BMW. And BMW is one of those brands where you love them or you hate them because there's a negative, there's some negativity attached to the brand as well. I do use my turn signals and I do not tailgate people, by the way. Uh, but I think they've done a good job with the thumb test, going back to, what I said, you could cover the logo up. It's not just their ads, it's the car itself, right? There's only a few cars on the road now that if you covered up the badge, you could recognize the car if it was created in 2020, 2010, 2000, 1990, 1980, 1970, 60, but going back to the, like the late 30s, the kidney grills have been on the front of that car. And they even had a chance where Kia, who's notoriously has ripped off other models, Kia produced their Tiger Nose a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember this or saw this. You could actually see there's an article out there on the internet where you could find where, I guess it was their head of product or something. They developed the Tiger Nose because they wanted to look like a BMW. So it's basically kind of the two round grills, but it was connected in the middle, which made it the nose. And so what did BMW do? This is my hypothesis, by the way. I don't see any proof of this. BMW said, "Oh yeah, well we'll make the grills huge." So now they now they take up like the entire front of the car, so they can't be mistaken for a Kia. But I think they've done a good job with consistency, which is something that people get wrong too. Often is not thinking long term or sticking with those distinctive brand assets or changing something for the sake of change. Not running that ad again that was successful a couple of years ago because we need to make new creative, be consistent over a long period of time. I think that's something that you can learn from that brand, whether you like the car or not. And there's lots of other brands doing that, obviously, but I think that's a good example that I personally like to talk about because it's one of my favorites. What am I grateful for today? First of all, I'm grateful for your time. Thanks for reaching out. I'm grateful that it's just a conversation, right? Which is really nice, and obviously things I like talking about. But as far as just general gratitude, I think some of it, man, is just as I reach, an age, the mid-century mark, is being able to take a look back and recognize how many times that I've learned from people and didn't realize it, and I get to reach back out to those people and tell them how important they are to me. And sometimes those are employees that maybe didn't have a good experience working with me, and I can still call them friends. Or a mentor that I had years ago and didn't realize that they were a mentor, and I get to reach out now and say, "Let me tell you how important you've been to my career." Um, Giving people credit for making a mark in my life is something that I think has become really obvious to me, and I'm trying to do more of that.
Yeah, there's no self-made. There's no such thing as a self-made man or woman. Yeah, I
Exactly.
agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. Well said.
yeah. Thank you so much, Philip, for your time and for your good energy and your wisdom. Thanks, and stay safe.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks for your time, brother.
Yeah,